Our Parsha Vayetzei begins with Yaakov on his way to the land of his mother's family to find a wife from the daughters of Lavan. He meets Rachel and Leah. We'll discuss that relationship shortly. He works for Rachel. He's in love with Rachel, so he works for her. Lavan swindles him in a number of ways, but one of the ways, famously, is that he switches daughters, and he forces Yaakov to marry Leah when he was, in fact, interested in marrying Rachel. So at that point, being swindled multiple times by Lavan, he works for him nevertheless, and he and his two wives, actually 4 wives if you include the maidservants of Zilpah and Bilhah, and they give birth to 11 of the 12 tribes and Dinah. And at that point, Yaakov asks Lavan for leave, and Lavan says, "Why should you leave? I'm blessed because of you." And then there's this whole very interesting. We won't be going into it this year, but it's a very interesting whole long parsha of the mating habits of goats, which the Torah goes into much more detail than almost anything else so far. And at that point, Yaakov is able to become wealthy, and he leaves, and that's where our parsha ends. So that's a quick parsha in a nutshell. And now let's go into detail. I'm going to share the screen for those of you who are on the computer. That's not the screen I want to show you. That's the screen I want to show you. All right, Baruch Hashem. Okay, here we go. Young Israel, 0107. That's the 7th parsha in the first book. Vayetzei, 5781. That's the year. Okay. If anybody's ever wondered where these titles come from. Okay, so it's not a total mystery. So let's keep going. So the again, like I said, the parsha begins Vayetzei, and here's the pasuk itself. Vayetzei Yaakov be'er Sheva v'yelech Harana. The Torah tells us Yaakov left Beersheba, where his family was, and he went out v'yelech Harana. He went towards Haran. He went to Haran. So there's 2 questions. The first, there's actually both questions are quite related, and we have quite a bit to say on them based on what Rashi says. See, Rashi was far more brilliant than anybody can ever really appreciate. As much as we love Rashi, and as much as he's quoted multiple times in every class, if you learn Rashi with other commentaries, you see how much depth he had in his seemingly minor commentary. So we're going to skip the actual Rashi comment for now, but it's going to be quoted directly in the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar notes that really the question begs to be asked. Usually when somebody's going somewhere, we don't usually get not only the origin, but the destination. Here we have both. We have where he's leaving from and where he's going to, as if both are very important. So Rashi tells us, and like I said, the Kli Yakar quotes him, the Kli Yakar from Prague, 1600s. So it says, Pirush Rashi. Rashi says, Lo hayat tzarich lichtov, didn't have to say where he came from. V'yelech Yaakov Harana, didn't have to say that he's going to Haran. Magid she'yitziat tzadik min hamakom oser rosham. The leaving of a tzaddik leaves an impression on the place that he's leaving from. Right? Because he left Beersheba, he left an impression on Beersheba. Beersheba felt the loss of Yaakov. Yaakov left, this great tzaddik, the complete man in many ways, left Beersheba, and Beersheba felt it. All right, give me a moment. I just realized I'm supposed to be sharing this on the Facey Bookery. Give me a moment to figure this out. How am I going to do that? Okay, do I stop share? That. Okay. There we go. Live on Facebook. Give me one moment. I apologize. Meanwhile, let's gosh. Okay, here we go. So much to do, so little time. Baruch Hashem. Okay. Let's digest that idea that the when the tzaddik leaves, it leaves a void, and of course you can think of that in many ways. Besides, of course, when a friend leaves and moves to another place, even if it's good for the friend, and even if you have a way to communicate in the future, nevertheless, it leaves an impression. And as such, what you have is you have a void. You're missing something. And okay, streaming live, great. And what I need to do is share the screen. Baruch Hashem. Okay, sorry about that. So it leaves an impression. All right. So again, Yitziat Tzadik Min Hamakom Ose Rosham. And then the question is, and he gives several answers, but the one I'm going to focus on today is quite intriguing. I think. I hope you'll enjoy it as well. He says, Ki Yaakov, Avraham, Yitzchak, Lo halchu makom lemakom. Didn't Avraham and Yitzchak, didn't they travel from place to place? It never says that they left the Rosham, that they left an impression. Were they not as great as Yaakov? So it's an interesting question. So that's where he asks the question. We're going to fast forward a little bit to the answer that I'm interested in today. Lomar shedavki yitziato shel Yaakov osa rosha. Specifically, Yaakov's leaving left an impression. Aval lo yitziat Avraham v'Yitzchak. Not the same way that Avraham and Yitzchak's leaving left an impression. Why? They left with their entire household. When Avraham went somewhere, he took his family with him. And not only his family, but all of the people he converted to monotheism were with him wherever he went. He took the whole group. He didn't leave anybody behind, and neither did Yitzchak. They didn't leave any tzaddik there. Who did Yaakov leave behind? Who did Avraham leave behind? He took with him Sarah. He took with him even Yishmael. He took with him Yitzchak. He took the whole household, Eliezer and Hagar. Everybody went wherever Avraham went. And Yitzchak, when he traveled, Rivka went with him, and his two sons went with him. When Yaakov left, he left behind Yitzchak and Rivka. He left behind that home. He left behind those tzaddikim. He left an impression in them. A tzaddik does not leave an impression in empty, hollow people. There have to be a kli kibel. There needs to be some sort of vessel that is able to absorb some of the greatness of the tzaddik. So when the tzaddik leaves, that there should be an impression. Otherwise, when the tzaddik leaves, and if he leaves behind a bunch of people who don't really appreciate him anyway, it doesn't leave an impression. Oh, so he left. He was here, he left. We don't really care. We never really cared, right? So that's, if you're one of the people who feels a loss when a great person leaves the town or when a great person passes away, consider yourself lucky, because not everybody feels that. And the reason is because they didn't make themselves into the kind of people who would absorb that kind of feeling. So when Avraham and Yitzchak traveled, they took all the tzaddikim with them. When Yaakov left, he left Beersheba, and Beersheba felt it because there was a Yitzchak and a Rivka there to feel the loss of the Yaakov. All right, so that's the Kli Yakar, making the Rashi a little bit deeper. But that's the first part of the Rashi. Second part of the Rashi, of course, not even the second, the third part of the Rashi there, but for our purposes, the second part of Rashi. And he went towards Haran. Says Rashi, Yatza lalechet lecharan. He left. Notice he went out of Beersheba. Why? to go towards Haran. That was, in other words, that was his intent. What's the big deal? What are we trying to say here? So here we need a little bit deeper. We need to understand what the message is in Rashi. And to that we're going to turn to the Nachal Kedumim of the Chida of David, the David Yitzchak. What? I forgot his name. David Azulai is the last name. The Chida. Chaim Yosef David Azulai. Sorry, it's been a long day. So let's so the Chida writes that he was going towards Haran. He quotes the Rashi we just quoted. He was going in order to travel towards Haran. Hakavana shebatchila hayadato lelechet tekaf lecharan. He was going to go to Haran. Why? He had money. And he had money. He was going to go with something. He had his pockets were full. Why? Isha to marry a wife, but he didn't go directly to Haran. Something happened on the way. Something funny happened on the way to the Colosseum. So what happened to our tzaddik here? It's to Yaakov. So it says Achar Kach. Achar Kach Yilmod Torah. Afterwards, he went to learn Torah. K'masha katuv beperek kedushin dav chaftet. So it says what you're supposed to do is first you should marry and then you should learn Torah. Then what happened? Achar Kach ba Eliphaz v'lakach lo hakol. Then Eliphaz, we know the famous Midrash tells us that Yaakov was on his way to escape the dangers of Esav, but Esav was not content with that. So he sent his son Eliphaz to go and kill Yaakov. Eliphaz approaches him, and Eliphaz says, "My father said I have to kill you, and you know, there's kibbut avayim, so I have to listen to my father." On the other hand, it's killing, and my grandfather who taught me Torah, Yaakov, Yitzchak, who taught me Torah, and probably his uncle Yaakov probably had a little hashpah on him as well, had a little influence on him as well. So they teach me that killing's not so good. So what should I do? I have to kill you according to my father, and I don't kill you. So there's actually a very interesting essay of Chaim Shmulevitz about how it is that Eliphaz can have such very different skewed mentalities. You don't have to listen to your father if he tells you to do something wrong. But anyway, that's not for tonight. So anyway, so what does Eliphaz do? Eliphaz says, there's a concept, Torah Shabbat concept that was quoted in the Gemara, and obviously they had this concept before, and that is that there are certain people that are as if they are dead, even if they are alive, they're as if they're dead. And one of them is actually two of them in this week's parsha, one in last week's parsha. So one is if somebody's blind. So that was in last week's parsha where Yitzchak was as if he was already dead and ready to give out blessings because he was blind. In this week's parsha, there's two occasions actually later on when Rachel says that if you don't give me children, it's as if I'm dead. So a woman who doesn't have children feels dead, and in that unfortunate situation, and then in Yaakov. When Eliphaz approaches him, is the other example of somebody who's as if they're dead even when they're alive, and that is somebody who's poor, dirt poor, and that such a person doesn't have any means with which to live, and that person is considered so poor that they're basically, for all intents and purposes, as if they're dead already. And that was Yaakov's situation. That's what Eliphaz does. He takes everything Yaakov owns. So Yaakov goes to Haran. In other words, like Rashi said, his kavanah was to go to Haran, straight to Haran, get married, do what the Gemara in Kedushin says, get married, go learn Torah. But he doesn't have money now. He can't just go get married. The Gemara says somebody who's dirt poor should not be getting married. He needs to be able to support a wife, build a family, build a home. How are you supposed to do that without any funds at all? So that's what happened. So when you're an ani and you don't have money with which to get married. So then, in that situation, Gemara says you should go and learn Torah. So that's what he goes to do, and that's why says the Chida. That's why Rashi has to tell us why he says he went to. Why do we need to know his destination? Because that was his intent to go there. That's not what ended up happening. He went, and the Gemara in Megillah tells us he went to go learn Torah for 14 years. That's a longer discussion that we'll hopefully get to some other year. That's what he goes to do, and that's why there's a gap of 14 years between when he left Beersheba and when he arrives in Haran. It shouldn't take 14 years to get there, but the Gemara tells us that he went and learned Torah, and the reason he went to go learn Torah, says the Chidah here, is because he did not have the funds to go get married. So he went to go learn Torah instead. Okay, so that's some ideas there. Okay, next pasuk. We're gonna skip a little bit. We're not going to talk in great detail about it this year, but someday I hope to. And that is the famous dream of the ladder, the angels going up and down, and what it means, and all the symbolism, and where he was, and there's a lot to say about all of that. Suffice it to say, in the dream, Hashem appears to him, and he says to him that his descendants are going to be like the dust of the earth. That's what it says. This pasuk right here. It says, "Vayazarecha ka'afar haaretz ufaratzta yadma v'kedma v'tzafona v'negba v'nivrachu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama u'v'zarecha." So your descendants are going to be as the dust of the earth. You're going to spread out to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south. You're going to spread out all over the place. All of the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and by your descendants. So the question that I sent out this morning was, why does Hashem promise Yaakov that his descendants would be like the dust of the earth when he's already promised that to Avraham, to Yaakov's grandfather? The same thing. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. We don't have a lot of repetition in the Torah, and whenever there is any, because the Torah is a divine text, not just an old book written by a group of scholars or some weird idea like that. It was, we believe, written by Hashem, given to Moshe. So now we need to know, what does this mean? If this is a praise or if this is a promise that's already been given. So interesting answer comes from the Sforno from Italy in the 1600s. Rabbi Ovadia Sforno tells us, so he says, after your descendants are like the dust of the earth, so in other words, after your descendants will have multiplied so much, you'll have so many descendants that they're going to be numerically, like just numbers wise, so much like the dust of the earth, then they're going to spread out. And he quotes a pasuk in Yeshayahu that says, so that you make you back like the ground, like a street for passersby. In other words, what is dust? Dust is on the ground. This is flying in the air, true, but it's what we step on. It's dirt. It's gross. It's not something that we want to be compared to. And what he's saying is, says Sforno, is that the Jewish people will be at that very, very low level. And that's when they're going to be, for example, when they're going to be slaves in Egypt, they're going to be as low as they can be. And after that, they're going to spread out to the north, to the east, to the south, to all directions. Just like it's Bilam's prophecy, with Karka Kobne Shade, they will smash the fountain of all mankind. And there's a final redemption of the Jewish people will come after they have suffered to the low point in their history. In other words, and this is a very important message, when is salvation for the Jewish people going to come? It says this Sforno, and say many commentaries, especially on Megillat Esther. Hashem saves the Jewish people when they are at their lowest point. You think we can't get any lower than we are today, and then the next day brings you even lower? Don't worry, because from that low point, From the lowest point that we can be, that's when Hashem is going to rescue us and bring us up to the heights. And that's when we're going to spread out and become a great nation. That's not the same promise that was given to Avraham. Avraham was given the promise that we would be as great as the stars and as many as the dust. This isn't a blessing of multitude of many. This is basically telling us a prophecy of how things are going to happen. We are going to be rescued after we are many, and after we are on our lowest point in our history, after we're the dust under people's feet. After that, Hashem is going to rescue us. And that's what we hope for. God willing, soon. All right, so Yaakov goes, he meets Rachel, he kisses her, he cries, and that's worth talking about for multitudinous reasons. That's worth a discussion, but not for tonight. So he continues, and he says he's going to work for Rachel. Lavan switches the daughters. That's worth talking about too. I have something I'm going to say on Shabbos to our millionaires in the morning. God willing on that. So meanwhile, though, the big question is. So he marries Leah, and eventually he works 7 more years. Before those 7 years are up, he marries also Rachel, and now he has 2 wives, and they're handmaids, Bilhah and Zilpah, and eventually the wives, we believe, had prophecy that they would be the mothers of 12 tribes, and they think, mathematically speaking, each one should get 3, then 4 wives, 3 children each would make 12, but that's not how things work out. Trying to see if I'm skipping something. I can't. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't have the. Moment. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Why did I do that? Oh, that's very strange. Okay, so I'll just have to tell you the pasuk myself because I don't seem to have it here. I messed up my sheet. I'll try to fix that for those of you who follow along later. Okay, so doesn't matter. Let me find the pasuk. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Here it is. V'shafti b'shalom al beit avivaya Hashem li le'elokim. No, that's not the right. One moment. I'm sorry. Oh. Huh? Okay. All right. So Leah starts having children. She has 1 child. She has another child, and eventually she has 4 sons. And on her 4th son, she calls her 4th son Yehuda. That is where we get our name of Jew from. Jehuda or Yehudim comes from the fact that most of us come from the tribe of Yehuda. Of the 12 tribes, the tribe that is not quote unquote lost is Yehuda and Levi and the Kohanim. That's a different story. And possibly Binyamin. Okay, so there's some discussion about that. Again, not for tonight. But back to Yehuda. So the question becomes, why did she call him Yehuda? So the Gemara in Brachot, find here my sources. I know I have it here somewhere. There it is. Baruch Hashem. The Gemara in Brachot tells us, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So Rabbi Yochanan quotes Shimon bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar. Miyom Shapara HaKadosh Baruch Hu et Olamo. From the day that Hashem created the world, Lo Haya Adam Shahoda LaHaKadosh Baruch Hu Hoda. It's a good time to talk about Thanksgiving. All right, there's not a single person who thanked God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ad Shabbat Leah, until Leah came around, and she praised him. She called her son Yehuda because Oda et Hashem. I am Hoda. I am thankful. I am grateful to Hashem. That's what it says in the Gemara. Very clearly quotes our pasuk. So this is a very interesting question.
How long is
What are you doing? We're already listening to it.
Okay. Let's try to be muted whenever possible. Okay. So again, so it says in the Gemara Brachot that it can't be that the first person to thank Hashem was Leah. Nobody else thanked Hashem. Not Adam, who made korbanot, not Noach when he made a korban, not Avraham, not Yitzchak, not Yaakov. Nobody ever thanked Hashem. Really? Very interesting. So writes the Katav Sofer, the son of the Chatam Sofer, and one of the Rebbe of Chaim Sonnenfeld. So V'tomar apam odet Hashem. So I'm sorry if it's difficult to read. I'll try to read it for you. Bishas Brachot quotes this Gemara that there wasn't any person who thanked Hashem until it came along Leah. V'hu Tumua, and this is a big wonder. Ki ha'avot lo hodo Hashem. The forefathers didn't thank Hashem al hanisim on all the miracles that Hashem did for them. She'asalahem. V'lo hikrivu karbonot. Didn't they make karbonot? V'shavchu Hashem. Didn't they give shvach? Didn't they praise Hashem? V'nirali afal pi masha marti. So then he quotes Tam l'shevach al masha azal. What it says in the Gemara in Shabbat. Somebody who says Hallel every day is doing the wrong thing. What's Hallel, by the way? Hallel isn't, as we think of Hallel, the prayer of Hallel with the brachot and the singing. Hallel is actually what it's also called the Hodu Lashem Kitov Kilam Chasdot, the long one, is what the Gemara calls Hallel. And the reason that you shouldn't say that every day, we say that on Shabbat, we say that on Yom Tov, but we don't say it every day. Why not? Think about it. Hodu Lashem Kitov, praises Hashem, Kili Olam Chasdo, because he always does chesed. But we shouldn't say that tomorrow? Shouldn't we say Hodu Lashem Kitov every day? Why are we only thanking Hashem? Why are we only thanking Hashem on the holidays and on Shabbat? So to answer the point of the Gemara there, it says Ki b'shvil shehu zocher chasdei Hashem tamid yafsid v'yenash v'kavana l'tzuya b'zeh ki be'emet tzarich adam lahodu b'chol yom b'yom kol hatov she'osa imo b'chol eit v'shah. Really, we should be thanking Hashem for everything He does for us, every moment, every second. V'amru Chazal, and it says in Chazal, Kol ha-neshama tehalal ka al kol ha-neshima v'neshima v'gam shezeh b'chol adam ein zeh chutz l'teva v'ein lo yoter b'chol b'nei adam tzarich l'chodod lo alav l'hakir ma rav tuvo v'ma godol chasto. So what he's saying is, we can all thank God for every single moment and every single second that He's giving us oxygen and that He's keeping our atoms together, or when they're regenerating every split second, they're regenerating in the right places. What Leah thanked God for, that the Avot did not thank God for, was Teva, nature. She had a fourth child. She was thanking Hashem for that, a totally normal occurrence to any woman who has 4 children, right? To have a child is a great thing. It's an amazing thing, but it's not an unimaginable miracle. I mean, it feels that way, don't get me wrong, but it's not unimaginable because you see it everywhere, right? It's not inconceivable. If you think it is, then you don't know what the word means, right? It's obviously, it's something that's obvious. It's something that happens all the time that people have children. And yes, it's miraculous. And yes, it's amazing. but it's part of Teva. It's part of the amazing nature that is also miraculous. But there's a difference between a miracle that happens all the time, like birth, like breathing, like the atoms regenerating. And there's a difference between that and a miracle that is Avraham winning a war against the 4 kings with just 300 men, or with less, according to the Midrash, right? The Hashem visiting people, and a ladder being shown of angels going up and down. That's a miracle. That's something to build an altar for, which is what they do. Yaakov builds a bama, which in just the right place. Not going to go into that right now. So he continues. I'm going to skip to the end. From here you can see the Avraham Yitzchak Hodu Hashem Mufurash. Obviously, Avraham and Yitzchak praised Hashem, as is obviously clear. Aval lahem nasu nisim. Hashem made miracles for them. Shelo b'teva. They weren't natural miracles. Ve'ein chadosh kolkach shemetzu atzmam v'chuvim lehodot l'shevach l'zvoach l'fnei Hashem zivchei toda. And so they were not. They did not have to give a normal toda. But think about it. Right, when a person gives a thinks, so I sort of skipped this part, but we have the idea that when a person has a miracle done for them, then they should obviously praise Hashem. They might want to make a neder, they might want to give tzedakah. All of those things are all true, but when normal life happens to you, what do you do? How do you thank Hashem for it? What do you do? So Aval Leah Metzinu Shenatna Toda Hashem Behulenik Laben. She gave thanks to Hashem because she had a child, a son. V'gam Shekain V'teva. That's natural. V'kama Nashim Olodato V'kama Banim. How many wives, how many women give birth to how many children? Miko Makom Lo Talta B'mikra V'teva. So they don't appreciate the teva, the nature of it all. So he says that this is the correct answer to the question. So in other words, what did Leah do that was so unique? Why is the Gemara praising her for being the first person to praise Hashem? She praised Hashem for nature, for the normal. Normal is also impressive, to say the least. Normal is also amazing. When we say Modim Anachnu Lach, and then we mention all the things that Hashem gives us every day, we should be grateful. We should be Moda Ani, we should be very grateful for the things Hashem gives us. And that's what Leah changed. Changed that whole perspective. We don't only give Hashem praise for the miraculously being saved. We should also praise Hashem for the normal. On that subject, and going into a little bit of depth, I think I'm not just doing this because it's the holiday of Thanksgiving, but it happens to be that this is a very important topic that is written about by Rav Shlomo Wolbe, Zecher Tzarech B'Bracha, my Rebbe's Rebbe, in Ali Shor, Volume 2, page 282 and 283. This is the Vad Chamishi. So the book Ali Shor split up into what's called Vadim. A Vad is a collection of people, usually, and a Vad, from Rav Wolbe's perspective, is a group of people who are helping each other work on their character traits. So he's talking here about the character trait of gratitude in this Vad HaChamishi, and so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It's quite long, but I have it here for you in case you want to look at it. I'm going to skip to. He mentions this this idea. He mentions this idea of Rashi. Chen katav Rashi b'chumer. Right. So he's quoting this Rashi on this pasuk where Leah thanks Hashem. Pam oder So it was because Leah felt that she was getting more than her share. Remember, mathematically speaking, each one of the 4 wives should get 3 children to make up the 12. And if Leah had 3 at that point, and now she has a 4th, she has more than her share. And for that, she's thanking Hashem. That's what Rashi says. So says Rav Wolbe, Hare al kol hatova she'adam mekabel asro liyot kafli tova. Any good that a person gets, it should be inconceivable for a person to not have gratitude. Gam al perut, even on fruit that grow on your field every year, you're supposed to bring them to Yerushalayim, right? In the time of the Beit Hamikdash. Heavy bikurim, they're called bikurim, bikaro, parsha bikurim. There's a whole parsha of bikurim of how that's done. That's how much gratitude. That's on the normal. That's when you get what you think you're supposed to get. But what about if you're getting more than you're supposed to get? Yoter mechalko magia lo dai bezesh in a kaf vitova. Being just grateful is not enough. Hu chayav lohodot. It's not enough to be grateful. You have to thank Hashem. You're getting more than you bargained for. You're getting more than you expected. You're getting so much more than what you were supposed to get. You should be super grateful. You should thank Hashem verbally. You should do something. He goes through this is the halacha of the 4 people who have to give a Thanksgiving offering. Nowadays they quote unquote bench gomel. There are other responsibilities for somebody who benches gomel, but many people are lax in this. But we're not going to get into that right now. So somebody who goes over the ocean, somebody who the Gemara says somebody who goes through the desert, somebody who's sick and gets healed, somebody who gets freed from prison. Those are the 4 that are supposed to give a Thanksgiving offering, and nowadays bench gomel. And then he goes through the Gemara's proofs. These are all psukim in the Hillim. And then towards the bottom of this paragraph, so he wants to focus our attention. So I guess the next paragraph. Ma Nora. So what seems is interesting is that davar shegila to Rav Mikelm, to the Saba Mikelm. It's very interesting is that Anu, so he quotes the Saba Mikelm, the author of Kelm in Chachma and Musar, says Anu roim kama anashim hayu cholim al eres doi v'yishlach Hashem divro v'yirapim. So we see many people who are very, very sick, deathly ill, and what does Hashem do? Hashem rescues them. He saves them. V'haya lahem lahosif tehila lahetiv tarkam. So they right. They have an obligation now to be thankful, to thank Hashem, their rescue. What do we see? Many people in the world, what do? They do the opposite. They become less from, they become less observant after they're rescued by Hashem miraculously from their illness. Lama? Why? So they should be even more grateful for all the great deeds that Hashem gave them. So it seems that the Yetzer, in other words, Yetzer Hara, becomes stronger on them and closes up their heart. It covers up their heart so that they don't feel the gratitude that they should feel. So writes Rav Wolbe, we have to be careful in this. You have to give thanks to Hashem for more than what Hashem gave you. You should be so grateful. Think of the air we're breathing. Okay, we're in masks. Okay, they smell. Okay, they're not comfortable. But nevertheless, we're still breathing. We're alive. We should be very grateful for that. We live in a country where we can speak our minds. We live, we're able to eat. Very few of the people online right now are going to bed hungry, right? Unless they're on a diet. But, we can be on a diet. We have we're able to do such a thing if we want to be. We shouldn't be not ungrateful, and more than that, we should certainly not be less enthused by God than we were before He saved us. You should do whatever you can to create greater connection to Hashem, not less. So this is this wonderful piece. I'll leave this up here, but so far what the main point here is, one moment. What his main point is that indeed people are not as grateful as they should be. Every kindness from Hashem is a kiss, he says, and a test. This is in the Zion, and to see if we will be appreciative. And yes, we can be appreciative. That's in our DNA. That's why we're Yehudim. We come from Hodah. We come from that. We should certainly do what we can to show Hashem how much we appreciate Him. Well, we're really out of order here. Okay, no worries. I'll fix that eventually. But meanwhile, let's get to this beautiful piece. Wonderful, important questions. Okay, so we have as we see, Leah gave birth to a number of children, eventually 6. And before that point, when she still had 4 sons, Rachel did not have any children at all. And the pasuk tells us, "Ve'avo gam el Rachel." Yaakov also lived with Rachel. Ve'ahav gam et Rachel. He loved also Rachel. Mileah. He loved Rachel more than Leah. Ve'avod imo, and he worked for her. Od sheva shanim achirot. He worked these other 7 years in order to earn Rachel from her father. So the next pasuk says, very interestingly, Vayar Hashem saw Kisnua Leah, that Leah was Snua, usually translated as hated, that Leah was hated. V'yiftach et Rachma, and he opened her womb. Rachel akara, and Rachel remained barren. So that's why Leah was able to have these children, is because she suffered by the lack of love from her husband. So to sort of make up for it somehow, Hashem made it so that she would be able to have children. So the question really becomes, did Yaakov really hate Leah? It doesn't seem very appropriate. It doesn't seem like the picture of tzidkut, of righteousness that we think of when we think of Yaakov Avinu, one of the avot, not only one of the avot, the av whose likeness is on Hashem's chariot, the like I said earlier, the premier man, the ideal, the apex of humanity is this man Yaakov, and he hates his wife. That doesn't sound very nice. So what's going on? So does he really hate his wife? So by the way, there's a bona fide machloket regarding this. First of all, just so you know, simple answer from Abarbanel is yes, he did hate his wife, and he was taken to task for it later. Even the ideal man, even the best human being, even that person makes mistakes. We are human. We make mistakes. Yaakov made the mistake of not liking Leah as much as he should. That's what he writes here. He says Sha'ala bet. So the Abarbanel, the way he writes his commentary, And he's in Spain in the 1400s, by the way. So the way he wrote his commentary is basically he would list a number of questions and then he would answer them appropriately. So his second question on this section was did Yaakov really hate Leah? Et Rachel Leah, so that he loved Rachel more than Leah. Gam et Leah. It seems that he also loved Leah. But the opposite, the Torah says itself. Leah. It says Leah was hated. So he goes on from there that that indeed Rachel was loved, Leah was not, and really they were supposed to be. If we know one of the reasons that Leah. It says that Leah's eyes were tender, as Rashi tells us from the Midrash, that she was under the assumption that it wasn't a bad assumption, but she was under the assumption that she was destined for her cousin Esav, and knowing that Esav was not a good person, how she knew was she told by somebody? Did he have a reputation already, or was it that she had some sort of prophecy about this? Either way, she was afraid that she would have to marry him, so she cried. Literally, she almost cried her eyes out. Not literally, but eyelashes for sure. So so her eyes were tender for that reason, and therefore she was just a very sad, miserable person for most of her life, until she got married and had children. But so she, for whatever reason, seems that Yaakov did not love her very much, but he certainly loved Rachel because Rachel was meant for him. For the same reason that Leah felt that Esau was probably meant for her, because she was the oldest, he was the oldest. They're cousins. They're supposed to continue this legacy, and that's what they thought. But she was wrong, and sort of wrong. If you remember from last week's parsha, from the parsha class, we said that in a way, we said from the Or Gedaliahu, we said that in a way, Yaakov took on the characteristic of Esau. So Leah married that characteristic. So that's why that happened, according to that perspective. But so that's one way to look at it. He goes into the diktuk and the lashon and makes it very clear that his opinion is that indeed Yaakov did hate Leah. Says Rav Shamshon Rafael Hirsch, the exact opposite. Also looking at the diktuk and also looking at the language. So what does he say? He says the pasuk does not say ki Leah snua, that Leah was hated, but it says that Leah, ki snua Leah, that Leah was hated, that the hated one of the two was Leah. Ha'achat ahuba va'achat snua. One was loved, one was hated. Doesn't mean that in Devarim, when somebody's married to two wives and one is loved more than another, doesn't mean that the other one is not loved at all. She's still his wife. You can divorce a wife you don't love. So she's loved, but he loves the one more than the other. So kisnua Leah, look at the pasuk. What does it say? Sorry, skipping forward back again. Kisnua Leah viftach rachma v'rachel akara. So if you see it in conjunction with the previous pasuk, gam el Rachel. He also married Rachel. You have gam et Rachel. He also loved Rachel Leah, more than Leah. Not that he hated Leah, but he loved Rachel more. And that's so. It does again. Kisnua Leah is what it says. Not ki Leah snua. So it depends on where you put the verb and the subject, or the object in this case. But let us note. I just want to continue with the Rav Hirsch. He always speaks very powerfully about this topic. Let us note that the main nucleus of the Jewish people did not come from the mother whom Yaakov, as far as the Torah relates, had chosen primarily because of the external impression made by her great beauty. It mentions how beautiful Rachel was. God chose precisely the one who felt slighted and disadvantaged and made her the principal ancestress of his people. For the names that his less loved wife gave to her sons show us that precisely in her feeling of disadvantage, she was saturated with love for her husband. The names show us, by the way, this is the same thing that the Abarbanel points out, that the names of the sons points to exactly what she wanted from Yaakov. The Abarbanel writes that from each son, she wanted to take away some dimension of Yaakov's hate for her. But again, Rav Hirsch is saying she wasn't hated, she wasn't loved as much. And it's the same thing, though. She named her sons because she felt she was getting more and more love from her husband. The names show us that she uplifted herself to fully appreciate the role of motherhood and the destiny of women and the happiness of marriage. And for both she cast her burden on God, who sees and hears all and causes his presence to dwell between man and woman. Her husband's love was her goal, and with every child born to her, she hoped to add another layer to the foundation of this love. In the end, her hopes were fulfilled. What was denied to the bride and wife was granted to the mother of children. In other words, she grew, the love grew for her because she was this amazing mother to Yaakov's children. Thus, pure love for husband and children, complete trust in divine providence, these were the basic values underlying the conception and birth, care, and education of the tribes of Israel. Their names immortalize all the values and assets that form the basis of the Jewish home and the happiness of marriage. He goes on about this more in the Collected Writings, Volume 8, page 112. Precisely Leah, the sad one, was privileged to experience joy in her home and in her marriage, whereas Rachel, the contented one, should be in quotation marks, was tested with sadness and grief. Right? And then we have, so I do have that pasuk. Okay. That's very nice. Okay, so all right, so we have this amazing concept of her gratitude for her being this mother, and she was a wonderful mother who raised wonderful children who become the Shiftei Ka, who become the tribes from which all the Jewish people are descendants. And one of them has an interesting name, and I'd like to conclude the class with a little discussion about this. Very interesting. So first of all, let me give you the background. Reuven, the firstborn, Leah's firstborn, finds dudaim, which are these kinds of plants. Some people say they're mandrakes. They mythologically, or legend has it, that they help people with childbirth. For whatever reason, Rachel, who is then barren, asks for those dudaim from Reuven, and Leah allows the sale as long as Rachel agrees that Yaakov would be with her that night. And when he is with her that night, why that's appropriate and not, that's a great discussion for another time. But for now, let's leave it at that's what happened. That the pasuk is very clear. That's not a midrash. That's straight up the words in the Torah. So then what happens is she conceives and she has a child. And the child she names Issachar. Now, Issachar is spelled with two samachs. And this first time that it's mentioned, it's actually pronounced Issachar. And then from that point on, throughout the Torah, except for their opinions, the last mention of the name in Vizot HaBracha, perhaps, it's always pronounced Issachar, not Issachar. So that's what it says. Let's look at the pasuk here. V'tomer Leah natan elokim schari. Hashem has given me my reward. Asher natati shivchati liishi v'tikra shemo Yisachar. And she named him. So what's the reward? The reward is for giving my maid to my husband. Keep in mind, like I said, this is in the context of when she gave the dudaim for her husband. Not the giving of her maid, which is also impressive, but that's when she when she realized that she wasn't giving birth anymore for a while, she allowed her husband to marry Bilhah, with whom he had two sons. And so the Khatam Sofer writes, he gives actually two answers to this question, but the question is, why do we pronounce Issachar so strangely? We don't pronounce it Issachar usually, like I said, except for the first time and possibly the last time. But certainly throughout, it's the second letter sin is silent sin. Why is that? So he says it's Meromez Beit Sacharim. Really, it's for two rewards, for two things. Echad Shechar Shachartich Sheni Natan Li Elokim Schari. So there's two rewards that she's getting. With Tam Rishon, what is the first reason? Nae Lechasot. So is the fact that she basically traded a night with her husband for the Dudaim. So that's not so pleasant. So again, sorry, take that back. So the first reason is the Tam Rishon is that na lechasot lakach ein sin ha'achad nikrat ele tenichtav v'rach hapam Rishon she'achar kach no al koch. Sorry, I don't know that Rosh Teva. Tzarich lo'odiyah shemo nikra bebet sinim. So in other words, there are two reasons why she was gifted this son of Issachar. One is the fact that she gave up her child. She gave up. She gave her, like she said, she gave her handmaid to her husband. And the second reason is because she gave up her son's dudaim for a night with her husband. The first reason is a lot more appropriate. I mean, it's been done before. It's something that Sarah did with Hagar, and it's something that Rachel did with Zilpah. So it's a normal, appropriate thing to do. The second thing is not so kosher. Like I said, it doesn't seem very appropriate to sell a night with your husband for some shrubbery. So it's not. It doesn't seem appropriate. And so therefore, it says the Chatam Sofer, what she was saying was, because the second schar is for a not very tzniut reason, the second sin is therefore silent, just like tzniut is covering up something that would otherwise be inappropriate. This inappropriate, somewhat inappropriate action, of course, we can learn appropriate reasons for it, and God willing, in future years we will, but what seems at least inappropriate definitely should not be out in out for everybody, for all the neighbors to see. It's to be hidden, it's to be kept it's to be kept private, and that's why the second sin in Issachar is silent. That's what I have for you tonight for the class. I'm going to stop the recording and ask if there's any questions.